Now, Bloomberg understands that Russia is seeking to take over uranium assets in Niger, currently held by a state-controlled French company. State-owned Rosatom is said to have had contact with military-led authorities as Russia looks to expand its presence in West Africa. Fascinating story. Let's bring in Bloomberg's Ondiro Oganga, who's in Kigali. Ondiro, Russia appears to be moving into acquiring assets in Africa. What do we know about this particular case?
Joumanna, what we know so far is that Rosatom is in conversations with the military-led government in Niger to acquire assets owned by Uranium, which is a French-backed company. And the conversation currently is around mining permits, but it's still at the very onset, so it's not clear what assets they're targeting, and the terms of transfer are yet to be laid out. Uranium, on the other hand, is a company that has majority shareholding in several other companies that do underground mining, pit mining, and other uranium projects in Niger. And it really makes sense why Russia is interested. However, Uranium says that they have been in contact with the military government in Niger, and they're not aware of any talks of transfer of assets. And this code of conduct, code of silence, cuts across France, it cuts across Kremlin and also Niger. But where it gets interesting is that the International Atomic Agency says that it's aware of a potential transfer of uranium assets. And this all began when there was a military coup in Niger, and the military government is leaning more and more towards Russia, which is paving way for them to express interest in areas such as mining assets and try and rebuild that Soviet-era influence in Africa.
I mean, it feels like something that we should be watching very closely, particularly because as some of these European countries withdraw, for whatever reason, from African nations, it presents opportunities precisely to the likes of Russia. How much could this situation actually impact what happens with some of these European markets and countries who typically would have had a presence in the African continent?
Joumanna, there's likely to be an impact because if you look at Niger, in 2022, it accounted for 4% of global uranium production. If we put France into focus, they got 15% of their uranium supply from Niger, and this was used to power reactors that account for 65% of their electricity. If you look at EU as a region, Niger accounts for a quarter, percent of about 25% of their uranium supply. And so this really gets interesting because they really depend on Niger. Prices of uranium have also risen because of the fact that imports were halted after the military took over power. And so this puts Russia at a really advantageous position because if you look at also global politics, the US and their allies would want to import from aligned countries, Russia and China likewise. The problem is that the US and their allies do not have domestic production, which puts Russia at an advantage.